Spain says it's going to take away Catalonia's autonomy as the regional leader ignores a deadline to abandon secession plans. What's next for the Catalan separatists, and how will Madrid impose its writ? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. It's a showdown with implications for not just Spain, but for separatist aspirations across Europe, even as the European Union faces marathon negotiations over Brexit. Madrid would be imposing direct rule on an autonomous region for the first time since Spain returned to democracy in the late 1970s. A special cabinet meeting is due on Saturday to trigger the process, suspending Catalonia's autonomy. But the Catalan president has threatened to declare formal independence in the regional parliament if Madrid doesn't hold talks. Carles Puigdemont claims widespread support. 90% of those who voted in the referendum earlier this month wanted to secede, but just over 40% of eligible voters cast their ballots, and many opponents of secession boycotted the referendum. Here's what the Spanish government spokesman said.
The central government of Spain noted this morning the failure of the president of the Catalan government to answer the very clear request as to whether he would proclaim independence of this autonomous community. In the absence of a clear response, we note that he has not answered our request, and therefore we will continue procedure of triggering Article 155 of the Constitution to restore legality in Catalonia.
To discuss this further, let's bring on our panel of guests. In Barcelona, we have Albert Royo. He's the Secretary General of Public Diplomacy Council of Catalonia. In London, we have Paul Whiteway. He's Director of the London office of the non-profit advisory group Independent Diplomat, an organisation that has previously advised the Catalan government. Also in Barcelona is Eduard Roig. He's a professor of constitutional law at the University of Barcelona. He also served as Deputy Director of the Prime Minister's Cabinet in Madrid. Welcome to you all. Eduard, maybe I could start with you because you're an expert on constitutional law. Neither side here seems to be backing down. How grave is this for Spain and for its constitution?
Well, it's maybe most grave attack on Spanish constitution we have had since 1978, since our present constitution was adopted. And it's for sure the most stressing situation for our constitutional law from that moment on. Really, we are still expecting that maybe we will have some kind of step back by the Catalan authorities. And especially in the last days, the Spanish authorities have expressly said that they expect that the Catalan authorities will go back by going to elections, to new Catalan elections in the next 2 months. That would be maybe the clearest and the least grief of the solutions and the exit ways for today.
Albert, let me ask you, also in Barcelona, how worried you are about the situation, and actually you're a Catalan official, about your own position, because there have already been some arrests.
Well, I will say that we are very worried, especially about what may happen here in Catalonia, as people will react if there is a suspension coming from the Spanish institutions, a suspension of our home rule. I'm sure it is an escalation of the crisis without precedents. That's not the way to tackle a political conflict like this one. Instead of trying to de-escalate the situation by doing this, the government of Spain is escalating the tension. And I think that people will react here in Catalonia. People will take to the streets to defend home rule and democracy. So it makes me be quite upset, certainly.
Paul Whiteway in London, give us the bigger picture. EU leaders are meeting right now. Is this going to be on their agenda? Will they be talking about this?
I think it's very likely that EU leaders will discuss it, at least amongst themselves. These developments present quite a dilemma for the European Union. Democracy lies at the heart of the principles which have brought these states together. And in addition, a number of these states are themselves the results of processes of self-determination which European states have endorsed. At the same time, there is the issue of territorial integrity, and nation-states essentially do not like the idea of states being broken up because they fear that it could happen to themselves, and therefore they're very careful about setting precedents. I'm sure that the European leaders would much rather this problem would go away, but at the moment it seems to continue to be set on a path to confrontation, which sadly is going to lead to more uncertainty and I think some economic damage to Spain and to Catalonia before it is resolved.
Well, we know that the government in Madrid is going to have a cabinet meeting taking place on Saturday morning, and that they are likely then, they say they're going to trigger Article 155, the so-called nuclear option. What is it? Well, the central government in Madrid can take what the Constitution calls all measures necessary to prevent an autonomous region from breaking the law. Article 155 has never been applied before, so its consequences aren't clear. The Spanish government's options include suspending the Catalan government and removing its leaders, including the regional president Puiggemont. Government leaders in Madrid could also take control of the Catalan police force, which defied court orders to close voting stations for the referendum. Madrid could also call for snap regional elections. Edouard, you know the Constitution well. Give us your reading of what the cabinet could do by invoking Article 155 on Saturday.
Well, I'm sure that what the government would like to do was to ask for regional elections as soon as possible. That would be the first option, because it's the most or the least grave option for the Spanish government. It would not suspend really Catalonia's autonomy, but just ask for a new election, trying to see if there is a real majority and a huge majority under the independent dispositions. But the problem for doing that is that the Spanish government knows that putting Article 155 into practice would probably give more and more support and more votes for independentist parties, and that the Spanish government think probably that they need a bit more time in order to have more chances to explain to the Catalan people which are the positions of the Spanish government and the Spanish parties. And that's why they probably think that it's not a good idea to have immediate elections after putting into practice Article 155.
So what are they going, Edouard, what are they going to do then? What are they going to do?
Well, we don't know really, but probably they are trying to gain some time, to win time, in order to have better options or better offers for Catalan people, in order to having Catalan autonomy suspended for some longer time, let's say 5 months, 6 months, and in this 5 or 6 months, they should try to offer the Catalan citizens, not to the Catalan parties, but to the Catalan citizens, a new perspective on constitutional reform or on legislative reforms in order to improve Catalonia's autonomy and Catalonia's financing system without having to give a response to the quest for independence. The question, of course, is if that time will be enough. The first question maybe if there will be such a time, because nobody knows what will happen in Catalonia if Article 155 is put into practice, and maybe there will be lots of people into the streets, and there will be need of police and security forces to contain those demonstrations. So those are important questions for the future. I'm sure that the Spanish government would like to have elections as soon as possible, but they know that elections should give a different result from the one they expect to have in just weeks, and that's why they will probably wait for some months more.
I know we're asking all of you to look into a crystal ball, and it's a case of action and then reaction. But Albert, how do you see things developing after Saturday's cabinet meeting? The government says it's going to invoke Article 155. What then happens in your view?
Well, the president of Catalonia has already explained that if the Spanish government proceeds with the suspension of the Catalan home rule, he will lift the suspension of the effects of the Declaration of Independence. So it means that there's going to be a formal Declaration of Independence as a response to the lack of dialogue coming from Madrid. Yeah.
So at that point, as early as Saturday, Catalonia could become an independent nation, not one recognised by Spain, not one recognised by the EU, but the people there would have a form of independence. That's your view?
Yes, I think that's what may happen in the coming days. I don't know whether it's going to be on Saturday itself, but certainly in the coming days. And we have to see what kind of reaction there is out there coming from the foreign capitals. We know that there are several capitals very much committed to the right of self-determination of the peoples. So we expect some capitals to start reacting to this new reality once it emerges.
Yeah, but not just the reaction of other capitals. The reaction from Madrid is the one you must be fearing. There have already been arrests of two prominent figures involved in the referendum. Do you fear a further crackdown?
We cannot rule that out. We've seen how the Spanish, for instance, the Spanish police can act aggressively against innocent people. Of course, they were following instructions coming from the government of Spain. So it's a bit, it's quite complex to see what may happen in the coming days. But it seems quite clear, because Rajoy said it quite bluntly, that he will do whatever it takes to stop this political process. Now the question remains, what is Mr. Rajoy ready to do? Does it mean that he is ready to send in troops here in Catalonia to suppress this declaration, to arrest elected politicians? Will they use the paramilitary police who are still here in Barcelona and in Tarragona, who aggressively hit innocent people 3 weeks ago in the referendum of self-determination? Well, we don't have this crystal ball, but it's quite tricky, the whole situation, sure.
Edward, if we pursue for now just a discussion of this worst case scenario, one of the big problems for Madrid would then be the regional police, the Catalan regional police, some 17,000 officers. Who would they report to? That is a problem for Madrid, isn't it?
Well, it's an easy question from the juridical point of view, but a very difficult one from a political point of view. From a juridical point of view, there's no question. The Article 155 orders any Catalan authority to obey the orders which the Spanish government may enact upon them. So enacting Article 155 or putting it into practice means that the Catalan police should obey the orders coming from Madrid. The question, of course, is if the Catalan police will do that and how the Spanish government will warrant that his orders will be really obeyed. We really don't know how that will be done. As an example, we can think on what happened in 2011 when the Spanish government decided to militarize some authorities at the airports in order to make them really obey the orders of the Spanish government and to punish them with a military justice code if they don't obey those orders. That could be, of course, be done again with the Catalan police. We don't know if that would be enough. We really don't know if the Catalan police will really not obey the orders of the Spanish government. We suppose that some of the Catalan police officers will obey the orders of the Spanish government, and we don't know what they will do in general. But I think all of the protagonists, the Spanish government, even the Catalan government, are convinced that maybe we will not reach that point, in the sense that someone will first ask for elections, be it the Spanish government, be it the Catalan government. And maybe those elections will be understood as different elections by everyone. So the Spanish government will think those are just autonomic elections, and maybe the Catalan government will think those are new constituent elections after declaring independence. But in fact, that would be new elections and a new parliament where maybe there would be a new a new majority and a new political line to advance, which wouldn't lead us to this kind of problems we are discussing.
Albert is shaking his head.
Have.
Albert has been shaking his head as what you're saying, Albert.
It's quite shocking to see to hear this kind of comments. So if they don't like this majority, they just force a new election and expect a new majority. It hides the threats that Mr. Millo, the representative of the central government to Catalonia, has already sent, which are that if there is a new election, pro-independence list could be banned. That's the way they try to impose and create a new majority, by banning ideas, by banning democratic proposals like this one.
It's not a problem that you like or you don't like the majority you have at the parliament. It's a problem that you have a majority at the parliament that has clearly stated that they do not obey the constitution of the country and the laws that state for that same parliament where they are majority. And you don't really know how much majority is that, because you have had a referendum which was stated without security, and you don't know how many people voted, what they voted, and so on. That's why
the reason why
some of us think that
referendum.
Okay, Albert,
yes.
Albert, you have your say very quick. Very quick. No, Edward, Albert, your say very quickly, please.
Yes, that was the reason why we wanted to have a referendum, an agreed referendum, just to confirm the absolute majority which already exists in the Catalan parliament supporting independence. To confirm that majority through a single issue vote, which is a referendum. I cannot understand why Madrid did not accept that. And instead of using legalistic arguments, they should be already talking politics, proposing something, how to fix this problem, instead of just using threats and boycotts.
Okay, I'd like to bring Paul back in. We've heard a scenario, Paul, where on Saturday we could have the article of the Constitution invoked. We could have a declaration of independence. Legally, is Catalonia then independent? Legally, is Catalonia in the European Union? Just give us the big picture.
If Catalonia declares independence unilaterally on the weekend, it will not be recognised by other EU states. It will not automatically be out of the European Union, as far as I understand it. My understanding is that Spain would have to initiate a process of expelling it, and thereby, rather paradoxically, actually recognising its sort of separate status. It would not be, I think, a good option for Catalonia to go down the UDI route. We know that countries which have declared UDI in the past can sometimes wait long periods of time before they are recognised. My organisation, for example, has worked with Somaliland, which declared independence unilaterally in 1991, and it has not been recognised yet. But I think there is a way out of this crisis, and the way out is actually for Madrid to copy London's example and to allow a legal referendum on the issue of independence for Catalonia. The advantage of that is that it would be a great demonstration of Madrid's democratic credentials, and it would allow, possibly for the first time, the arguments in favour of remaining part of Spain to be properly aired in a properly structured campaign towards that referendum, with lots of debates about the pros and cons of independence, and would enable everybody to have their say. Of course, there is a risk that at the end of that period of time, Madrid could lose that argument. We don't know unless it is actually tried. But that is the democratic approach to dealing with this problem.
Edward, what about that idea, the Scotland model? Prime Minister Rajoy takes a bit of a gamble and calls a referendum on his terms, and then potentially either wins or loses.
Yes, that was a theoretical solution some years ago. Maybe it was the best solution some years ago. I would have agreed with that. But the fact is that not only President Rajoy, but more than 70% of the Spanish parliament does not agree with that solution. And that's a big difference with the Scottish experience. The British parliament decided to accept that solution. That was a political decision by the British parliament. The Spanish parliament has not decided that. And at the moment, the Catalan authorities have not been able to convince the Spanish political parties to accept that solution. So what I think is that the Spanish authorities could think of that as a solution in a long term, not just now. Probably because they think that a referendum is not a good way to decide this kind of things, and I should agree with that. And on the second line, because they think that the constitution does not allow such a referendum, and they should change the constitution. The fact is that Catalan authorities have not got to convince them, has not got to convince more than 20% of the Spanish parliament that such a solution would really work. So that is not a feasible solution, I would say, right at this moment.
Albert, let me just ask you another question about what might happen on Saturday. You've presented a scenario where we could have a declaration of independence. Is Catalonia ready? Is it a viable nation?
I think it is. From an economic point of view, from a political point of view, this is a viable country. Sure. We are 16% of the Spanish population, but we account for 20% of the Spanish GDP. It may also explain why Madrid is being so stubborn when it comes to the Catalan issue. We are happy to negotiate the way forward with Madrid. We are always happy to negotiate. And also, if there is a declaration of independence, I'm sure that President Puiggemont will come up with a new proposal of negotiations, of new talks with Madrid, in order to discuss the best way to implement this declaration of independence, because that should be done in a reasonable way, offering also legal certainty to all players, to workers, to citizens, to enterprises, and the best way to do that, as it was till now the best way to do this, is through talks, through negotiations. I cannot understand why Madrid does not come into terms and accept to talk politics and accept to propose something. Eduard, he was saying that the referendum is not compatible with the Spanish constitution. I have to say I disagree. There is no single article preventing Catalans to have a referendum. In fact, we already had a referendum for our home rule 10 years ago. So we could have a non-binding referendum, at least to let people express their political will. And then have
that's the point that Paul made earlier, and I'd like to come back to Paul now. If we do get a unilateral declaration of independence on Saturday, how big a crisis is this, not just for Catalonia and Spain, but for the whole of the European Union? Briefly, if you can, Paul.
I think this is a pretty big crisis when a major European member like Spain has a region which declares UDI. It'll send a shockwave, I think, through European countries. On the other hand, that could actually galvanise European leaders into taking some form of action which could contribute to a solution, but it would definitely be a shockwave.
I do agree that that's a very great crisis as well for the European Union. But I would just stress that that's a very big crisis here, in the sense that that declaration of independence will not mean that Catalonia can behave like an independent country. That will not happen, because Catalonia does not have the necessary structures and the necessary will of enough people to do that. And
okay,
that
well, thank you. We could go on discussing this. There is so much to discuss. Thank you to all our guests, Albert Royo, Paul Whiteway and Edward Roig. Al Jazeera's teams in Barcelona and Madrid are doing some excellent reporting on this subject. Watch and read their work on our website, aljazeera.com. If you have thoughts on this subject, please post them before the crunch day on Saturday on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Or you can use Twitter. Tweet us what you think. We're at AJ Inside Story. I'll be back for the next edition of Inside Story soon. Until then, take care and bye from all the team.